Joining us now on the line from Kingston, Ontario, Father Raymond de Souza. He is editor-in-chief for Convivium magazine, chaplain for Newman House at Queen's University. We also want to remind you, as we welcome Father Raymond back to the program, that you can be part of this conversation. Our producers are hosting a live chat right now on our website, theagenda.tvo.org, so chime in and share your views. Father Raymond, you did hear the interview with the Education Minister, and I thought I'd just give you an opportunity off the top to respond to whatever it was you wanted to respond to.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Steve. It's good to be back on the agenda. You're very persistent, and you were correct when you said she was playing hardball. I mean, she says anybody can choose any name, but if one student in one school wants a name and the principal or even the board of trustees for that school board doesn't want it, they don't have a say. That's not really collaboration. And when she got around at the end of the interview talking about taking over a board, you kind of got a sense that this is a collaboration on her terms alone. There are lots of clubs in schools. They choose all kinds of names. The principal moderates that. He or she may decide that this or that name might be suitable or unsuitable for a particular school. In this bill, Bill 13, on one issue and one issue alone, that is that of homosexuality, the statute says that a particular name must be allowed. Bullying is a lot bigger than homosexuality. On the rest of the sort of the vast array of measures for bullying, there's not a particular model or a particular mandated name. This one has been highlighted for a reason. We don't know exactly why, but the minister is just frankly being disingenuous when she says this is a collaborative approach, when by statute she's insisted that one option would prevail if invoked. Well,
let me find out where you are on this, because of course you know the Catholic Teachers Association has said they're okay with that label if that's what the students want. They are content to go along with the law. How about you?
Well, I'll just clarify, the Catholic Teachers Association, the Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association, is a labor union. The ones who are responsible for the schools are the elected trustees, and of course under the guidance in terms of Catholic doctrine from the bishops, and the trustees and the bishops have offered a different view than the labor union has. Look, Catholic schools have a lot of experience with students from a vast array of backgrounds, including non-Catholic backgrounds. We have a lot of non-Catholic students in our schools. Bullying is not a new issue. Schools know how to deal with it. They know how to deal with the issues which are more prevalent than homosexuality, which are sort of body image and grades and so forth. Schools are able to do this, have been doing it for a long time. The only objection that has come from the Catholic community on this is that the title Gay-Straight Alliance is not a neutral term. It has a certain history. There's a certain history to these gay-straight alliances. They're promoted with an agenda that has a different view of homosexual acts than the Christian tradition has. And so what the Catholic schools have said is that we're against bullying. Our catechism teaches us that. We know how to operationalize it, to use the word the minister does. And we can do it in a responsible way, subject to the principal, subject to the elected trustees, which are somewhat forgotten in this. The trustees of the school board are elected. They're not department employees of the Ministry of Education. And we can handle it, and we are already handling it, as the minister did concede in one of her points.
Well, let me ask you directly then.
Sure.
I'll ask you directly. Do you believe that this bill is more about advancing a so-called gay agenda than about tackling bullying?
The provision in the bill about the Gay-Straight Alliance is yes. Because it does not give any rationale why this particular aspect, which is not the dominant form of bullying in public schools or Catholic schools, why this one has to have a statutory name legislated by Queen's Park. The rest of the bill doesn't do that. So whereas everywhere else this problem is left to principals and boards to develop policies, to report on how they're doing, to manage it with the best interests of the students in that school in mind, that doesn't apply on this one issue. And the minister doesn't explain why this one issue, as opposed to all other forms of bullying, has to be treated differently. So therefore, I think you could say, logically, there must be something about, as you put it, the gay agenda that is of particular interest to her.
Okay, Father, help us out with this. For those of us who are not Catholics, there seems to be a great deal of consternation about this one very small three-letter word, gay, that upsets certainly church hierarchy and others as well, but certainly church hierarchy. Can you help us understand why there is so much controversy around this word?
It's not the word gay per se, Steve. It's the gay-straight alliance. That's the term to use for these clubs. And gay-straight alliance isn't just some neutral term that has been offered as a possible name. It has its history. They started it about 25 years ago in the United States. The principal promoter of the gay-straight alliance kind of logistics, how you'd set one up and so forth, is EGALE in Canada. EGALE has a different view of homosexual acts than the Christian tradition does. So it's not that there's the word gay as opposed to, or even the word straight, that's the problem. It's just that the gay-straight alliance is not a name, it's a model. And that's why it's in the bill. If it was just a suggestion from the Minister of Education, ex nihilo, it wouldn't be there. It's because it connotes a particular approach to this problem. And that's why it's not the word gay, it's the gay-straight alliance and its history and its point of view on this.
Okay. As you know, Tabitha Southey in the Globe and Mail has come out with a column in reaction to what she believes is an overreaction by the Catholic Church on this issue. I'll read you a small excerpt of what she had to say and then get your view on it. This might be, she writes, the wrong fight to pick. Polls show that most people in Ontario support the existence of GSAs. GSAs don't make kids gay. No one says, I don't have anything after school on Tuesdays and I can't play chess, I think I'll be gay. These clubs are being founded by students who have specifically identified the bullying of gay students as a distinct issue and who aim to offer peer support because most people, and ironically Catholics are very big on this one, are against suicide, which is too often the outcome of being gay, alone, and bullied at school. And I guess the question that emerges from that is, are you concerned you're kind of on the wrong side of history on this one?
I think that when we talk about sexuality in the schools, much of what Catholic teaching proposes seems to people on the wrong side of history. Leave aside entirely the question of homosexuality if you want. There's all kinds of sexual activity that goes on in the schools that's contrary to the Christian gospel. We do our best to preach the gospel. It's not always followed. So in a certain sense, we're on the wrong side of history is a kind of a comfortable position for those who preach the gospel. There's also an element of this, which you would know very well, Steve, from your history in Ontario politics, where there is a large constituency in Ontario which has never really been comfortable with Catholic education. And one is aware of that. The columnist makes the point that maybe we don't want to sort of anger that constituency, but we've lived with that for a very long time in the province of Ontario.
So what could the government have done on this that might have got more Catholics on board?
Well, it would have been very simple. Look, right in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, when it treats the question of homosexuality, it says, expressing a disapproving judgment on homosexual activity, that homosexual persons ought not to be subject to any unjust discrimination or, which we'd say in the context of schools, bullying and so forth. It's right there in the Catechism. It'd be very easy to build a Catholic club around respecting differences. I use that word because that's what the school trustees in Ontario, Catholic school trustees, have proposed, that would accomplish the same goals. But the government was bound and determined that it would be called the Gay-Straight Alliance with the agenda that name implies. And this was going on under discussion for many, many months. The Catholic school trustees in Ontario, the Catholic bishops of Ontario, fully expected something to be worked out. And then about 10 days ago, the minister, in that famous spirit of collaboration she was talking about, announced that there would be no further discussion, that her way would be legislated, and then of course it was voted through within 10 days in the legislature.
However, the Catechism also says homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. And I wonder whether in Ontario of 2012, with its multicultural society, with its tolerance for diversity and so on, that any institution can get away with saying homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered.
I don't know what you mean by get away with it. We also would say that sexual activity outside of marriage is disordered. We would say that a man who leaves his wife and abandons his children for a mistress, that's a disordered use of sexuality. If you only say, or if you present the sort of frame as in the church gives everybody a free pass, but has a particular sort of hang-up about homosexuality, then people would say, okay, that seems unfair. But the standard that the church proposes, and the whole Christian tradition, not to mention shared with our Jewish brothers and sisters, not to mention the Islamic community, is one that proposes a kind of a high standard for human sexuality and ordering it properly. Now, if you only focus on teaching on homosexuality, yes, it would seem, hey, this seems unfair. But the vast majority of sexual activity that the church and the Christian tradition would consider disordered that goes on in society or in high schools is heterosexual, not homosexual. So if you focus on one thing, it may seem that you're only focusing on one thing. But the church's catechism, the church's teaching doesn't focus on only one thing, even though that has been the dominant issue in this particular bill.
Now, I hear you on that, but just to pick up on the examples that you used, I don't think extramarital sex is protected by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I think you're legally in this country allowed to be gay. So when you use the word disordered in association with that, is that more problematic?
Problematic in terms of people taking offense, problematic with people seeming to be offended by that, sure. I mean, I'll acknowledge that to express a negative judgment on this aspect or almost any aspect of human sexuality would certainly be considered, it's an obstacle, if you want to say, to people hearing what we have to say. But it's legal to be gay, it's legal to be, we don't have laws about sort of sexual behavior for the most part in Canada. The gospel proposes an ideal that we believe is in accord with human nature and human flourishing. We have a society that at the moment is not doing too well on marriage, sexuality, family issues. So it might be that the wisdom of the Christian tradition might have something to offer to a culture that otherwise seems not to be flourishing precisely in this area.
Okay, Father Ray, I've got about a minute left here. Let me put one more thing on the table. Catholicism's teaching, if I understand it, regarding homosexuality is rooted in so-called natural law. Mm-hmm. However, some will say that political rights and artificial contraceptive technology have now evolved to the point that natural law isn't that natural anymore. It might even be out of date. You want to speak to that?
Well, natural law means the law that flows from a reasoned deliberation on human nature. So it doesn't mean the law of nature and the law of the jungle. Human nature has not really changed. I mean, sometimes we think in the 21st century that homosexuality, that means of artificial contraception are things that are new that we invented in the 1960s. These questions have been around for a very, very long time. And so in the sense of a Christian tradition, and in fact a natural law tradition, which goes beyond the Christian faith, to say something about human nature, I think is worth listening to. I think it's more than worth listening to. And human nature in the 21st century is not radically different than human nature in the 10th century or in the 1st century or in any century, because precisely it's our human nature. And we think that with the help of God's grace that can be elevated to a very lofty and life-giving vision of the human person. And we're quite convinced that it's not worth selling that out because we think that we can't live up to it anymore.
Father Raymond de Souza, we always appreciate your visits here on TVO from Queen's University. Thanks so much for joining us again.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.